Hey, everybody, this is Melissa McKenzie, publisher of the American Spectator. Joining with me again on the Spectacle podcast is Scott McKay, the Louisianan, the crazy hayride fella. And
What?
last week,
What?
I'm a Texan.
Oh
You're a
my
Louisianan, you crazy Cajuns.
God. Unbelievable.
Anyway, we had promised all of you that this week, and the thing is, I don't know how many of you saw last week's podcast because it was taken down by YouTube. Thanks, censors.
Yeah.
And we had promised in that podcast that we would be positive this week and that the whole podcast would be just filled to the brim with good news. And so we're starting this week with the speaker news and the state of the GOP in the House of Representatives, because according to Scott McKay, the man, the myth, and the legend, he says great things have come out of that. So, Scott, what's happened?
Well, look, we got Kevin McCarthy as speaker, which was kind of always going to happen. But we got Kevin McCarthy under circumstances that are maximally positive for both the conservative movement and I think the Republican Party. If you're going to be the party kind of on the outs, if somebody else occupies the White House and also occupies the Senate majority, it's good to be the party of the country rather than the ruling class in Washington. And, Kevin McCarthy was a guy who pretty much everybody understood as being, by and for and of the ruling class. But for him to get to be speaker, he had to agree to open up the House of Representatives as the people's house in ways that it has not been for a very, very long time. And they passed a rules package, I guess on Monday, that was, exceptionally good. I mean, you're going to have legislation have to run through committees and get committee markups, and you're going to have members doing amendments on the floor. You've got a single subject rule, which to me is the number one most important reform of congressional process that needed to be done. No more of these garbage omnibus bills. That's all gone. You've had changes and reforms to the Rules Committee so that these things can't be gone back on. They're going to set up a church committee on weaponization of the FBI and other governmental agencies, which is really good stuff. There's also going to be an oversight committee looking into the origins of COVID, which is a fantastic thing that really should have been done, long before now. But of course, Nancy Pelosi wasn't going to do that. So I see like a whole bunch of really good things. Now, is any of this stuff going to, dramatically change your life? No, because over the next 2 years, you're going to be stuck in Washington gridlock. Okay. Now, gridlock is actually a good thing. Okay. When they legislate less and govern less, it means that you have more freedom to live your life. And typically speaking, when we've had gridlock, we've had a little bit better government than we've had when one party has controlled all this stuff. And as a Republican, I hate to actually say that, because you would think when Republicans are in charge of everything, they'd be in a position to do really good things and make things better. And that has not been the case at all. You've had awful government when Republicans have controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, and even worse government when the Democrats have controlled all three. So, there's some reason to hope that Congress is going to get a good bit better. And if McCarthy actually sticks to the things that he agreed to, which is a little bit of a concern, but with that rules package passing, he's got less freedom to do it. You might actually see Congress debating bills, and you might actually see a real legislative process taking place rather than what you've seen for the last, 6-8 years. That has been a disaster. When all the bills come through the leadership in the speaker's office, both on the Republican side and the Democrat side, this has happened. And you get these last minute jam it through, bills where they attach everything to a piece of must pass legislation. And it's not a legislative process at all. And it's really been a disgrace. And that's gone now, at least for now. And I think that's something to celebrate. I mean, I'm really hopeful and positive about that. And I think everybody else should be as well.
What do you think about, so one of the rules is that C-SPAN cameras are out of the House chamber. How do you feel about that?
Well, there's, what is it, live.house.gov, right? That you can see everything that goes on the floor of the House. So, I don't know that you have to have C-SPAN cameras in there.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're just pulling the feed from the House directly, then I think that that's fine. I like transparency, obviously, but how it's promoted, I don't really care.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that one person on like Twitter pointed out to me, because I was like, I don't know that I want the C-SPAN cameras gone, but they said that it might reduce some of the grandstanding, whereas, speechifying to the cameras rather than actually getting stuff done. I don't know. My favorite thing that came out of this whole speaker thing is that Dan Crenshaw didn't get a committee chairmanship.
Yeah, that's really too bad, isn't it?
It's so sad. He's my rep, He's
really?
He's my rep.
You need to get about fixing that because he stinks.
People call him Eye Patch McCain or whatever.
I prefer the Cyclops.
Cyclops.
Because he reminds me of, and I don't know if I'm dating myself by this reference. I don't think so, but he reminds me of Big Dan Teague, who is John Goodman's character in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes.
Right? Who comes off as this like, he's kind of likable, and he beats you over the head with a tree branch, and he takes all your money and he runs away. And it turns out like he's a member of a really awful organization in the back end. It's like, that's Dan Crenshaw. That's Big Dan Crenshaw. Big Dan Teague. He's the Cyclops with the eye patch, and he's a nefarious actor who everybody thought was a good guy at the beginning, and finds out, oh no, he's not.
Yeah.
And so to me, he's the Cyclops, and John Goodman should lose a little bit of weight and then play him in the movie.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, I was like, I hate politics and would not ever want to run for something, but he's so awful. And he's my district where I have lived now for over 20 years. And I'm like, he does not represent accurately the people who live here. He's terrible.
You're not Raytheon. Are you Raytheon?
Am I? No.
No. Okay. Well, then he doesn't represent you because he represents Raytheon.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. He's just the worst. And so the whole thing, it bothers me. And having a funny thing about this. So during the election and during the primary, because I didn't vote for him in the primary, and I voted for this no-name guy who immigrated from Africa, who I was like, you know what? He seems to have the things that I believe in. Give him a shot. So that's who I voted for. And but Crenshaw's people came to my door like, I don't know, maybe 6 times. And I didn't answer the door ever because I didn't want to talk to these people and tell them why I'm getting my vote. And so anyways, I was just like, and I've met him. No, just no. Yeah. So anyway, so that's a positive coming out of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Poor Dan Crenshaw is deprived of his, the position he thought and expected he would get. So I'm happy about that. So this is
I'm not sure that quite fulfills the requirements of a positive show. I think you're kind of shoehorning something in there, Melissa. I'm not sure we're being true to the spirit of this thing the way
it's positive to me. I don't know how our listeners will feel.
It's like saying, I'm positive that this sucks. But anyway.
Exactly. Okay, so but the thing is, the changes that are coming, the fact, and let's face it, there was gridlock anyway coming, which is a good thing in my book.
Right. This is the process.
Right? It's the process.
That's what I said.
Nancy Pelosi left a diatribe on Twitter today, 3 or 4, about how horrible Republicans were because we were voting against the IRS agents.
Right.
And I'm like,
right.
Oh, Whores,
Yeah.
as if it's not
Go
the
sell that one to the public. Let's see how
yeah,
that works out.
exactly. Poor middle class are the ones. Now, this is not going to do. Am I wrong about this? Is the defunding of this even doable? It can't get passed.
Well, it depends, right? I mean, you pass it, the Senate's going to sit on it.
Right.
Sooner or later, there's a must-pass piece of legislation, and you attach it to that. I mean, I'm assuming I actually didn't see what this was. Is it a rescission bill?
Yeah, they voted to defund the funding of the 80,000, 7,000. And I wasn't
Right, but
sure.
was it just a clean rescission, or was it something
I
else?
don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so like people who were around in I guess it was 95. I want to say that was the year when they had the earthquake hit. I think it was Riverside in California, and there was a bunch of earthquake aid that it was like $30 billion worth of earthquake aid or whatever that was going out to California, and they attached. I guess this was Gingrich's crew, and they were really smart about how they did this. Is they attached a rescission of a whole bunch, like $180 billion or something like that, like a whole bunch of crap spending that Bill Clinton wanted, but they put a $30 billion earthquake aid in the rescission bill. So in other words, it was like, well, we're cutting $180 billion so that we can spend this $30 billion on the earthquake aid.
Can they do that now though? Because the
I don't know. I don't know. Well, you probably could because it's a straight up spending piece, right?
Okay.
I don't know that it's a must pass piece is the thing. But the point was it was earthquake aid, and these were pay fors, but the pay fors were way more than the actual earthquake aid was. And so like they still brag about that, like this is how it's done, right? Because Clinton there was no way that he was going to veto earthquake aid,
California,
right?
Yeah.
Like there was no way he could do that. He had to swallow this, and he hemmed and hawed, and he hated it. But at the end of the day, they actually got to cut that $180 billion or whatever it was. And so that's something. I don't remember if the numbers are exactly right, but the point was it was like 5 or 6 times the amount of federal aid to California for this earthquake that they managed to cut from the budget. And it was all stuff that they had already known. We're going to cut this as soon as we can. It was like, here's our deal. And the thing was, like, if you need federal aid because your house just got destroyed in an earthquake, you don't give a damn about, farm supports for Belgian endive growers in, Kentucky or whatever. I mean,
you certainly don't care about IRS agents and more, and 87,000 more of them.
Right. And so I don't know that this bill necessarily is, going anywhere, but so long as you have that on the table and you wait for some, either must pass or highly desirable to pass piece of legislation, whether it's, a hurricane thing or earthquake or, whatever, when they're like, oh no, we got to go spend this money. It's like, okay, fine. We're cutting the IRS agents to pay for it. Right. Of course, the other thing is you have this CBO is saying, oh, but this will add to the deficit if you don't hire these 87,000 IRS agents. Like the CBO did that.
Oh, right.
So the next thing Kevin McCarthy needs to do is to fire all the people from the CBO who are running that. Because the fact of the matter is, okay, this is something like $1 trillion more that this is going to add to the federal debt because you didn't have these 87,000 people to go collect the taxes.
Right.
Please.
Well, like I can't remember who it was on Twitter, and I apologize because I'm going to talk a little bit about the extensive content, is that that the processes of the IRS are so egregious to deal with for the public. And their phone systems, their computer systems are archaic. Getting an answer is nigh to impossible. There's just so much waste. Americans pay their taxes. Like if you look at the different countries of tax avoidance, Americans are way at the bottom. They pay their taxes and they're afraid of the IRS. And so they do their best. The problem that Americans have is that the rules are so arcane.
It's too complicated.
is too complicated. So maybe they make a mistake because they misunderstand. But the problem isn't that they're trying to avoid paying taxes. The problem is they can't get an answer when they have a question. And so are having to submit things that maybe are not right, but because they don't know. Or like in my case, there's a time where you talk to one IRS agent and you get one answer, and you talk to another and you get another. And there's no good situation for that.
And then you pick the answer you like and you get audited.
And then you get audited, right? And the thing is rich people can avoid all this. Like they talk about, well, we're going to get rich people. No, they're not. Rich people have vast.
They have tax attorneys and accountants. They know exactly how to beat the system. Look, the people who pay all the taxes in America are like, they're like the new money people, right?
Right.
So when you first start making a lot of money, like you get a really good job and now you're going to make a lot of money, or you start a business and it takes off, or whatever it might be.
Right.
Okay. Those are the people that pay all the taxes because they haven't quite gotten sophisticated enough to hire the people they need to hire to beat the rap on taxes. But they've got a lot of money coming in. And that's the people that get hammered. Okay. Now, those people almost all vote Republicans. So this is this is who they're feeding off of. Right. And it's so funny because Democratic policies make less of those folks. So it's like everything about this does not work, right? But you're right. The easiest thing, if you wanted to maximize tax collections in this country, the easiest thing that you could do is just come in with a flat tax. And if you want to make it somewhat progressive, then the easiest thing to do there is to say, okay, we're not going to institute this tax until you hit a certain level. And so your effective tax rate, let's say if you did, okay, the first $50,000 a year that you make, we're not going to tax anything. Everything else we tax at 20%. All right. You make $60,000, your effective tax rate is like 4%. Or whatever the number is.
Oh, right.
If you and it's like, okay, well, we're not taxing the poor. Now, the way I would do it is I'd make you pay taxes on the first $5,000 worth of income you have. Okay. And then everything else we can take off the table so that everybody's got to pay $1,000 in taxes every year. Right. And then you have people voting like taxpayers, but you still have a really simple tax system and you go from there. They'll never do that because they built in all of these giveaways in the tax code to all of these different, the number one thing is the, mortgage interest and all this kind of stuff.
The thing is, speaking of mortgage interest, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats tried to reverse the mortgage interest deduction reforms that the Republicans made. And the only people who benefit from that are rich people in coastal cities.
Absolutely.
And so it's absurd. So that would be a tax cut for the rich. All of this IRS stuff that Nancy Pelosi is bleeding on about, this affects the middle class and everyone knows it.
Right.
So again, with the lies, so the good news is that we at least have a mindset in the House to be more for the little guy, and with the rules changes that you're talking about, the process in the House is going to be more democratic.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We're going to have a wide open debate, and it's actually going to be interesting to watch Congress because the last 5 years, 7 years, okay, well, let's see what's going on the House floor, for example. And it's a procession of people upset about something that was done that they couldn't affect, right? I've just voted on a bill that I had absolutely no idea what's in it. And now that I've voted on it, I see that, on page 365, there's this stupid thing that I would have never voted for. And how dare you put this in? Like, that was Congress. Like, that's what you got to see. And now you're going to actually have people debating things. Like, they'll bring a bill to the floor and somebody will come and bring an amendment. Hey, I want to get rid of this piece of crap on page 364 of this bill.
Right.
And I can't vote for it that way. And that's going to be chaotic. But you know what? The American people will start to see this and go, yeah, take that out of that bill. Like, nobody wants that. Right.
Right.
And the one lobbyist on K Street that got it put in is going to be like, oh, geez, like that. Right. And so all of a sudden you start to have a little bit better government because it's more responsive to the people, because people actually see what they're doing. And they have done an unbelievable job of hide the ball. They're going to have to do a worse job of that based on these new rules. And I got to tell you, I mean, like the Schoolhouse Rock, alumni
I was just thinking of that.
is like dancing in the streets right now. Okay, like we're all going to dress up as like I'm just a Bill guy from Schoolhouse Rock for Halloween this year. Or whenever the next costume party is. I'm gonna have to go pick out my costume. I want to be just a Bill because
Have you seen
just a Bill is a thing again. Isn't that awesome?
It is awesome. So SNL did a funny skit about that during the Obama administration, when it says they did the whole skit of the "I'm just a Bill," blah blah blah, and then they did, well, I'm an executive order. They like push the bill down the stairs of the Capitol steps.
Yeah, that's it.
So we're really getting back to the way, I mean, it should be. And the fact that so many of the establishment Republicans in the House, it shouldn't be the Freedom Caucus, shouldn't be the only ones who are wanting this. Every single reform that was proposed, and I have to say, it amused me. I am neither a fan nor critic of Matt Gaetz. I don't care one way or the other. But him sitting there like a Zen Buddha with a grin on his face while all this mayhem is happening around him, and I was like, these people all deserve this and more. I enjoyed it just for the spectacle of it. And then you had the libs on Twitter screaming, and you had the establishment people going, how dare these people, it was just all the umbrage and all the fake shenanigans. And then him just sitting there and pleased as punch.
Right.
was like, right. I found that part of it very enjoyable. And I was like, the other thing that this achieved, more good news. I'm going to share more good news inadvertently. And I think it's a God thing, because I have been assured by people in the know that it was not planned. Republicans are notoriously bad at messaging, but one thing that all of this did is it pushed the January 6th thing was a nothing.
Absolutely.
It stole all of Biden's thunder, everybody trying to talk about the threats to democracy, right, and everything. None of that happened because all of this spectacle was happening in the House. And I was like, did they plan this? Did like Gaetz and Trump plan this? No, that didn't happen. It just worked out that way, that all the thunder was stolen, which was a beautiful thing to behold.
No, it is. It's absolutely terrific. Yeah, now the next step here is they need to go rescind that money for DOJ to conduct more witch hunts of people who apparently escaped the dragnet from January 6th. And so they can go drag these guys off to that Chateau d'If prison in D.C. that they've been putting the protesters in.
You're joking. You're joking, but
no, there's no. I mean, that is terrible. Literally what it is. I mean, like if you go back and you reread the Count of Monte Cristo or watch the movie again, and there's the whole scene when Edmond Dantes gets brought to Chateau d'If, like, they bring you here when they're embarrassed by you. Like, he says, I'm innocent. It's like, we know. That's why you're here. The embarrassingly innocent people are the ones that we come here. And we're going to beat the living hell out of you every day, every year on your birthday. And it's pretty much that's what this is. Because nobody is there for, killing Brian Sicknick. I mean, they made this whole BS argument about, he was killed. Like, okay, well, who killed him? Right? Oh, we don't know. Like, that's right, because he died of a stroke the next day, right? But you continue to push this lie, and yet you can't show me a conviction or even a charge of somebody that went up for attempted murder or any kind of violent crime on January 6th. This is all people that are in there for trespassing.
Right.
And how long has it been now? This is 2 years, more than 2 years now?
2 years in the gulag.
Yeah, for trespassing.
For being welcomed into the Capitol by the Capitol Police.
I mean, look, at some point, and what I'm really hoping, because I know this is something that the establishment Republicans don't want to mess with, but at some point, there's going to be, I don't even know what's going to trigger it, but there is going to be some, whether it's a cultural event or whether it's somebody like Elon Musk tweeting about it or whatever, there is going to be some event that will shift public opinion on the January 6th protesters to the point where your average American is going to say, I can't believe these people are still in jail. At some point, that because look, 2 years and running, okay. I mean,
without
unless
a
you're
trial,
partisan,
without a
yeah, no
trial,
trial,
no
no
trial.
bail, none of this stuff. And somebody is going to serve out their sentence, and then they're gonna go, do a Fox News thing and describe what the conditions were like. There will be something, and my guess is it'll happen relatively soon, within the next few months. And at that point, you're going to start to see a shift in public opinion where people start questioning, why aren't these people being let go? Like, what's going on? And at that point, the Biden administration is going to start getting a good bit of pressure. You need to let this, you need to make this go away because this is a problem.
I don't know. The thing is that, not to be the Debbie Downer on this positive podcast day, but
no, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that today.
I'm not allowed to do that today.
No, you have to save that for next week.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say this. Color me skeptical. That's all I'll say.
That's not.
Yeah.
All right, well, just give it to me. What, all right. What do you think? You think these people are they're too intransigent that it'll ever happen? Or
I think that when you have 50% of the country who has been told, because of all their media coverage, that this is the worst thing for democracy since, whatever, Benedict Arnold. And then you have the Republicans who are so mealy-mouthed about it, that I think because they hate them too. This is the thing, that the establishment Republicans hate these people. They want the true believers, the people who would be willing to get on a plane to go to Washington, D.C. for someone like Donald Trump. They want those people to suffer because they hate Donald Trump. I don't see there's any incentive at all for anything to change.
Well, but you're going to have this church commission thing, okay? The weaponization of the government. January 6th is going to come up in that. Okay. And I mean, you're going to have the Ray-Eps and that whole thing. You're going to have that. And that could provide there is going to be some event. Look, there's always a black swan event eventually when you're doing something that is unsustainable.
Remember,
political prisoners is unsustainable in America. It is. Okay. Now, we have the argument about, well, is this still America? Oh, fine. Okay. I'm going to assume this is still basically America. All right. And sooner or later, there is going to be something that is going to shift public opinion. One of these grandmas who has been languishing in these, one of them dies. Okay. And then, the family makes a thing and somebody says something that actually goes viral and it turns into a thing, because things can go viral on Twitter now. Okay. They're not being throttled like they were. You're going to have something, some Hollywood actor who doesn't have a right-wing deal, looks at one of these, for example, Tim Robbins is a total COVID anti-vax guy now. And he's all over the place talking about how terrible it was. They made everybody take this vaccine. You can't get any more left-wing nut job than Tim Robbins. And he's saying this stuff. Eventually, sooner or later, there is something that pops and it starts to shake public perception. Now, the other thing is you're going to protect Joe Biden when the guy is clearly non-compos mentis. And they're continuing to try to protect him. And at some point, even the earnest efforts they're making now are not going to be enough.
Are they though? Because the thing is, it's I think that the deep state is wanting him gone. And the reason I think that is I don't think we would have heard about the classified files that were in his
that was a tell.
Yeah,
that was a tell.
I think it's a shot across
so
his
embarrassing.
back. Yeah,
that is so the raid Mar-a-Lago and do that whole business that everybody was like he's the president, he can declassify documents anytime he wants. Like,
Right.
why is this even a thing? Like, it was just
Right.
stupid. The whole thing was stupid and nakedly, partisan and abusive and whatever.
Right.
And now you find out that he's got this whole freaking trove of stuff in this, vice presidential library that he
As a vice
set up.
president, he doesn't have the president's authority to
Right.
declassify. So he's a common citizen who had classified
Right. And, I mean, it's 10
documents.
times worse than anything you can accuse Trump of, and you get it. But this is the kind of thing that they would have kept exceptionally quiet, and all of a sudden it pops. It's like, that's interesting.
Didn't pop. They've known for 2 months. It didn't pop before the election, of course, because they didn't want the Democrats to get wiped out or something, or a negative story.
It's
now
a modified limited hangout, but it's a hangout, right? And it's like you look for these little clues of, kind of chinks in the armor.
Yeah.
And they start to show, and meanwhile he's out there, he gives a speech and says something, and everybody's like, what did you just say? And I mean, it's more and more frequent, it's happening more and more often. You're gonna start to see them pull him back, that they've kind of periodically done, which is okay. Don't make him as visible, because he needs some rest and relaxation, and more Adderall or whatever it is that they give him. So at some point, these things are not as sustainable as they were. I mean, I actually think he's lasted a lot longer than I expected him to before the dimension completely.
The hook comes out from the side of the.
Well, look, it's going to happen, and at that point, then it becomes, because he's bound and determined he's going to run again in 24, right? Like, he's bound. Like, oh, no, I'm running, and it's like, how can you run? You can't even get through this term. And at that point, the Democrats who think that they can get Gavin Newsom elected, or whoever, are going to, they're going to force him out. And at that point, that's when it's like, okay, so how much leverage can we use to get rid of this guy? And if it's 6 really bad months of his job approval going down the tubes, and then we can get somebody else to ride in and save us, it's better than continuing to put this thing out there. Because the one thing about these guys is, yes, they march in lockstep. There's no personal loyalty on the Democrat side at all. They will, if somebody is a liability and they can make, they will run them off. They will eviscerate them and ruin them in no time flat. Look what they did to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, right? I mean, she was a disaster as their party chair, but she was a good soldier. She did what they told her to do. And for her trouble, they packed her off and, off to obscurity with you, right? So they will absolutely, it doesn't matter if you're a good soldier or any of that, they will absolutely, if you're a liability, they will run you off. And unless you have the goods on people. And I don't know that Biden has the goods on anybody. I mean, his scandals are worse than anybody else in that party right now. So, I don't know what leverage he has when they finally decide what a liability he is. And I think you're going to start to see that play out this year, because you had all the bluster about, we didn't lose the House as bad as we thought, or whatever. It's going to start to sink in that they may not have the power to turn back the stuff you've already done, but you can't pass anything through the House anymore. Like, that's over. Like, you've got as much as you've got. And now to make policy, you got to do it the way Obama did, which was executive orders. And those people don't like that, right? Like, people already know that the presidency is way too powerful. And when you remind them of that by doing executive orders on things which couldn't pass through Congress because they're not popular, you pay a price for that. And the problem is that Joe Biden's already got crappy approval ratings. So at some point, it starts to become a deal where it's like, okay, like we might have dodged a bullet in 2022, but there's really no way to dodge it in 2024. Because let's remember, they're got, like, as bad as the Republicans are, the Democrats are going to lose the Senate. They have 24 of the 34 Senate seats, and like 11 of them are in states that Trump won in either 16 or 20. There's no way that you're going to not, they would have to win, unless they could take Republican seats, and I looked at the 10, and I don't know how many Republican seats that they could get. They would have to win 23 of the 24 to maintain control of the Senate. And actually, they have to win all 24 because if they have to win 23 of the 24 plus the presidential election in order to control the Senate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you're already looking at a bad cycle. And, so the way they've actually got to run somebody popular as president, or else they run a serious risk of 24 turning into kind of the dam breaking. Now, this assumes that the elections are actually honest and that there isn't ballot harvesting and mules and Dominion machines and whatever else you want to talk about. I'm assuming that at the state level, you can fix some of that, or that there's scrutiny, or that the Republicans get good at fixing elections and ballot harvesting by 2024, which is the other interesting thing that's going on that I think is actually positive, which is it's starting to look. I talked to a couple of RNC committee people this week. It's starting to look like Ronna McDaniel might not get reelected as RNC chair. Starting to look like that. You had this letter that there were, I think it was 27 major donors to the RNC wrote that basically said she's got to go. We're not giving another dime until she does. And her entire reason for being is what a great fundraiser she is.
Right.
And now you've got these major donors who are like, we're done, right? Not effective. We're not paying for this anymore. That, to me, that's hopeful, because she has not been good. We've had 3 cycles with her running the show, and all 3 of them have been vast underperformance. We're talking about 2018, 2020, 2022. In any job that you do that badly, you're going to get fired. And it's time for her to get fired. And
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, it's not just like people like Melissa and I saying it at this point. There are people who are actually, involved in the running of the RNC or funding it or whatever, who are legitimately publicly coming out and saying she's got to go, we got to get somebody else. And I'm assuming that's Harmeet Dillon, but it may not be. There may be somebody else come up at the last minute that ends up being a candidate. We'll see what happens. But I thought I'd throw that out.
Well, so potentially more good news. I went and scoured the internet for good news because we were having this podcast come up, and I was like, what are some feel-good stories that have happened? And there's quite a few of them. One that I think that is important for our listenership because of the demographics, let's just put it that way. And this is that grandparents who spend time with their grandchildren have fewer COVID complications because they've been exposed to the colds of their grandchildren, which gave them protection against COVID. Mm-hmm. So all of this, and this came out today. So all of these in the New York Daily News. So in a New York.
Oh, and the Daily News is like the worst. So if
yes.
they reported it,
right,
it's a grudging admission at best.
A grudging admission. So grandma, you can be around your grandchildren and actually have it help your health. So, these little stories are coming out for all the scaredy cats out there, because it's kind of the masking and all of that is still kind of a way of showing your devotion.
I still see people wearing a mask alone in their cars.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to cut them off and make them stop. It's like, reach in the window and take that mask off. What's wrong with you? I don't get it. Like, why would you still do that? At this point, do you just like wearing the mask?
I think it's a religious thing. It is the leftist woke type of, it's a version of like a nun's habit. You just
I get that, but a nun's habit doesn't interfere with your breathing.
Right.
It's uncomfortable to wear that stupid face diaper. Why would you want to wear that thing? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well,
I remember, because I grew this beard, not that, it was a little bit before COVID came out. But when they finally, okay, everybody's got to wear a mask. And they were like, oh, and if you have a beard, you need to
Right.
shave it because otherwise the mask won't work. And it's like, are you going to demand that I shave a beard? Is that where we? I mean, like that was the most offensive thing of all. It's not like I'm so attached to this. I think I look
Right.
a little better with it than without. But it's like,
Mhm.
no, you can't tell me I have to do. You can't grow a beard because your COVID mask won't fit right. It's like,
Yeah.
my God, like where do these people come from? And the funny thing is well, we're emulating what the Chinese do because the Chinese are like really, really, really good at fighting COVID, right? Like they're so much better than us. How's that working out for you, right? Like the whole country, it's 3 years on, the whole country is still shut down. Supposedly got 7 different strains of COVID in Beijing alone.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this. If you haven't, you can find it on YouTube. And I don't know why I'm telling anybody to go on YouTube and look for something because of what they did to us last week.
I know.
Bastards. Go look at Rumble first.
Go look at Rumble. Yeah.
Joe Rogan had Peter Zehan on as a guest, and he was talking about all these like big geopolitical subjects, and he talked about China. And I mean, he's if you've seen Gordon Chang on TV or some of his like radio appearances that he's done, like Gordon Chang is like a big China expert. I mean, you can pretty much believe everything he says because he can document it's true. And Gordon Chang's been talking about the demographic problems that China has for like a long time. It's like, the thing of it, a little bit dangerous because they haven't started the big decline yet. And once it starts, they're going to be like scrambling to just take care of their own thing rather than like be an aggressor around the world. But there's this kind of window while it's still out there, look out Taiwan, the rest of it. Zehan's like, they didn't even have 10 years. He's like, because this COVID thing it's totally exposed like how utterly incompetent that government is. Xi doesn't get information because like people are scared to death to tell him something he doesn't want to hear because that's how you get shot, right? And like so, like he's cut off from reality.
That's how you get a kidney taken while you're alive.
After they shoot you, right?
Yeah.
And then you're not alive, and so it's okay. But and then your family gets billed for the bullet and probably the surgical procedure that took your kidney to get to somebody else. But anyway, so like he's like it's so dysfunctional, and you bring up the ghost cities that they built out in the sticks in China that we're going to put 1 million people here, and unfortunately nobody wanted to live there because it was like, well, it's in the desert and I don't really want to go live there and there's nothing there. It's like, well, we built all this stuff. It's like still don't want to live there. And so like the amount of money that has been wasted in that economy, they're in a state of crash in China. And the question is like, okay, so how do they manage that? And they've got this massive demographic problem in China. I mean, the one-child policy coupled with, East Asian culture. You used to be able to say Oriental culture, but now you can't.
I think you just did.
I did, didn't I? Here's a positive thing for you. We're reclaiming the language. The thing is like you want a son. Like that's the culture. Like you can have daughters too, but you really want a son. And when they told these people, well, you only have one kid, it's like, well, it's the one kid's going to be a son. So they aborted all the girls, and you've got like 150 million more men than women of childbearing age, right? So how are you going to get married in China, right? Like, and these are all like 20 and 30-year-old guys, and like, what are you going to do? And so you've got this massive demographic problem. And like Gordon Chang has talked about this. So like these Chinese demographers have gone and it's like, look, we're going to have half our population in 60 years because there's like nobody to have kids. And something like 45% of the women living in urban areas in China are saying, I'm never going to get married. And they do not allow you to have a kid out of wedlock in China. Like they don't allow it. You have to have a license to have a kid, which I guess is a leftover of the one-child policy. And on the license, you have to say who you're married to, right? So like, like there's this thing in China where like, girl gets knocked up and she pays a guy to marry her so that she can actually go have the kid. So it's like it's like this really, really, messed up deal that too much government has caused. And so like China is now in a situation where they're beset by so many problems domestically, and COVID has just completely turbocharged that, because like all of the cities in China are basically shut down now. And it's a massive supply chain issue, which a lot of American companies are now currently in the process of trying to make crash changes to their supply chain, which is something that Trump wanted all along, was to try to pull our supply chain out of China. And it turns out that COVID, that China inflicted on the rest of the world, right, is going to end up being the thing that actually does it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of proof that what goes around comes around a little. Or maybe it's proof of something that Sun Tzu used to say, which is that if you stand by the river long enough, the bodies of your enemies will float by. And that's kind of like what's going on, right? Like, I mean, this is blowback because, they thought, well, we'll just shut it down and we'll let COVID, circulate to the rest of the world. And then that way our economic damage from this will be less compared to the rest of the world, rather than us bearing the brunt of it. 3 years on, the rest of the world is done. Yeah. Right. I mean, you still have COVID and people still get sick from it or whatever, but like it's starting to be recognized, and the strains that are still extant in the rest of the world, it's a bad cold. Okay. So we can deal with it. It's like you were talking about last week. It's to kids, it's not more deadly than the flu. Right. And so, you can worry about the flu like you always have, and you really don't have to worry about COVID where your kids. Grandma, you probably still do. But then again, there are very few grandmas that haven't been vaccinated against this thing. Okay. And there's some evidence that the vaccine actually works with old people. Not a lot, but some.
Hey, Scott, you know what just occurred to me?
Go for it.
That this podcast is going to be booted from YouTube again because we're using the C word.
That's okay. Go on Rumble.
Go on Rumble. This is the word that cannot be named, evidently, and it gets you banned. But since we've already
should name it every week.
Since we've already dove into this topic, some interesting research coming out of Germany, where they have a highly vaccinated population. In the last year and a half since the vaccines have come into being, 38% increase in unexplained deaths among those between 18 and 40. Yeah. And so a researcher here in the United States who was at one time all for all the COVID vaccines is now yelling, stop, stop, stop. All of these, and the actuarial tables coming out in America, it's not as high as the Germans, which is, astonishing numbers there. Right. But it's not good in America either. It's about a 17% increase or 20% on the, life insurance and people who are unexplained deaths.
Right.
And the interesting thing that is, to me, is, so we have that football player that we talked about last week who, just kind of, and we keep seeing this with young, healthy people.
We had that reporter from Canada's state television that collapsed in the middle of doing
that was scary to watch.
Wow. There was a basketball player. I can't remember.
It's just happening.
Yeah, it's like
but we still can't talk about it. Like everybody's going. It's like on Twitter, that kind of thing is like there was a guy on, and I can't remember his name, but some kind of big deal lefty, and he was saying that because the person who was against the vaccines ended up getting COVID and dying, but he was like 60 something, terrible health, and was it all the risk factors for dying with COVID. Right. And I was like, and he was like, you won't hear any of the vax deniers talk about this. And I was like, you won't hear anybody talking about, because he's right in this sweet spot for dying from this virus.
Right. It's sad, but it's not remarkable.
It's not remarkable. A 17-year-old who is perfectly healthy and never had a health issue in their life, and a week after getting the vaccine falls dead on the basketball court in a high school game. Yeah. That's a concern. Right. And we've been seeing that. If you see the videos of all the athletes strung together, it's like a horror show.
and look, thankfully Damar Hamlin managed to pull through.
Yeah, thank
Okay. And I like that's look, you want to talk positive stuff? Modern medicine worked a miracle with that guy because
yeah,
like by all rights, he shouldn't be around right now, and he is. And I
yeah,
absolutely love when he woke up, and of course he's got the breathing tube in, and he can't actually talk, but they gave him I guess they gave him something to write on or whatever. And first thing he says, "Did we win?" And they were
right.
like, the doc's like, "Oh yeah, you won. You won the game of life."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not my question. Then we were like, well, we had to cancel the game because you collapsed on the field and everybody got scared. It was like, oh. So
Right.
anyway, but I
Well,
mean,
I think the positive thing out of this all, though, is I think the tide is turning. The questions that we were not allowed to ask, I think that are being asked now. And
we're going to spend 2023 talking about that very issue, and it's
yes,
going to like we talked about it last week. That is going to be a massive, massive point of conversation in this country. Okay, and it's so great that the House is going to actually investigate the causes of COVID while all this stuff is coming out. Like this entire thing is going to be a national discussion that has been denied us for 3 years. Okay, which is a big deal. I think that might actually be not necessarily a political game changer, bigger than that. It could be a cultural and societal game changer. Hopefully the lesson that gets learned is do not submit to authority that is not based on fact and truth and can demonstrate and defend its position, because that's everything about COVID. I mean, it was all because I said so. And too many people just, well, okay, I mean, these are the public health people and they know what they're talking about. So I guess so. When anybody who had put any scrutiny on what they were telling us would realize this has no basis in anything. Wait, you told us we didn't need to wear a mask, and now you're telling us we do need to wear a mask, or maybe we need to wear two, and all of this other stuff, right? Like everything about this was wrong. Like just didn't even smell right. All of it was just counterintuitive and bad. And now, we're finally, I mean, we're seeing damage as a result of it, but we're able to at least see patterns because you're always going to see that over time. Like the other thing I was going to mention is Max Mitchell, who is an offensive tackle for the Jets. 25-year-old, 6'8", 330-pound guy. I mean, like, great athlete and all this kind of stuff. Like his career's over because he turned up with blood clots all over the place.
Yeah.
Okay. What do they call it? They call it a clot shot. And it's like, yeah, was there an underlying cause of this? No. And of course, the NFL doesn't want Max Mitchell to say anything.
Right.
But supposedly, like he's, okay, I'm out of the league. What are you going to do? I mean, like I'll sue for my pension because you made me take the shot.
Right.
So like Max Mitchell's like looking for a news outlet to go tell his story to. At least that was the story that I heard. So like this is another piece to this that's going to become, I think that's going to become something that they can't hide. They can't deny this. And I think it's a big deal. Like, I think this is a legitimately big deal. And this is why we were talking about it last week. And obviously it's the reason they pulled the show off of YouTube is because you can't talk about this. And if it wasn't a big deal, they wouldn't have that rule.
Well, now that all of the scientists who were booted from Twitter are back, there is some balance coming to the conversation.
Correct.
And then all of the ties between the government and these pharmacological companies and all the perverse incentives all the way through the system are being exposed. So that's good news. Another piece of good news.
Well, wait, before you do that, I want to give a shout out to Jeff Landry, Attorney General of Louisiana.
Yeah.
He and Eric Schmidt, who's now in the Senate. I don't know who Eric Schmidt's successor as Attorney General of Missouri is, but both of those two like started this unbelievably awesome lawsuit where they're suing, it's like big tech, Google and Facebook, and the federal government for censoring the dissemination of information about, among other things, COVID. And so you are now seeing, as a result of that lawsuit, things being disclosed, and it is proven at this point beyond a shadow of a doubt that the federal government was behind the censorship of all of this stuff over the last several years. And I mean, this is a game-changing lawsuit. This thing that's going on it really deserves your attention, because what's coming out of this is, I mean, like, not that everybody didn't suspect that the government was playing a role in the censorship that was going on social media, but now it's not a theory. Now it's an established fact. And the question is, okay, what do you do to act on it? But the thing is it's illegal. So
it's fascism. And the thing is, so what I was going to say hello, Jeff. Nice to talk to you. He's my favorite Cajun. Anyway, Jeff Landry, wish you all the best. Glad you're bringing this lawsuit. It's awesome. I don't know what Ken Paxton's doing here in Texas about that. Hopefully he'll join in. But one of the other topics that has been kind of filtered through this government filtration system, and one of the things we haven't talked about but is huge, is all of the grants that are given to people who they're only given to people who will fulfill the political narrative. So like in climate change, you cannot get honest research funded because the federal government will only give people money who are willing to say that, the sky is falling.
That's right.
And this
has been true for 20 years, right?
And it's true in medicine, and it's true. And so people who were at the top of their fields have been utterly ruined by government agencies. And I'm going to say something, the docs who couldn't make it in private practice or in private research and go into the government, it's always the way it is, or in the insurance industry. Right. The failures never end up actually clinically working with people, because a guy like Fauci wouldn't know what to do with an actual human.
Yeah, plaintiff lawyer's dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, med mal smorgasbord if Fauci was actually seeing patients.
Exactly. So we have the failures, and the same is true with so much in science, where the only thing being funded is the narrative, which is why so much innovation kind of just comes to a screeching halt, which is why NASA has to go to SpaceX or, whatever, Blue Origin or whoever is working on the new thing. It's not in the government, because the government strangles any new idea because they have old interests to keep fed. And so in climate change, we have been told that the drought in California, that's it. California is, and I'm kind of curious about this, how the Lake Mead and Hoover Dam are doing, because the water was so low, but there's been all this rain and everything. And has California spent the money on capturing all this rainwater? Let me answer that question for you. That would be no.
Right.
But right now, I'm going to give a shout out to former Texas Governor Rick Perry. One of the things that he did when he was governor of Texas was completely revamp because we don't have a lot of natural water in Texas. So he built all these reservoirs and pushed that through, so that with the population growth that he foresaw coming, we would have water for the people here.
Capture the water.
Capture the water. And so Texas is in a good place with that, even though we had drought for many years because of his foresight. California, with their crappy governance, have not done that. And so all the water that's coming down in barrels right now out there, which is good news because they need water, they have no way to catch it because they didn't invest in the infrastructure. And they've been running around like, we're all going to die with the climate change stuff, instead of doing something about it to help their people.
I mean, it's not all that complicated. You have, next to, I guess, Alaska, you have the longest coastline in America. There's just on the other side of that coastline is an ocean of water.
Right.
Desalinate it. It's not hard. It's actually a very simple procedure to desalinate water. You can do it with 100-year-old technology. Okay. It's not a difficult thing to do. And for whatever reason, they won't build desalination plants. And it's like,
well, they're ugly. That's why they wouldn't build a refinery. Like they did all this the infrastructure, their refinery infrastructure is failing. So they have to rely on Texas for their refining ability because they don't have enough there. But they voted down building another refinery out in California because it would make the coastline not look pretty.
Well, and look, I get it, but find a coastline someplace that's not all that, that's not all that hot. And then just, okay, we're going to build desalination plants and we're going to run freaking water pipelines to populated areas. It's really not that hard. Okay. I mean, like this is, it's the same reason they have power blackouts in California.
Right.
Because, it's like, well, we have to, brownouts rather. We have to, when it's, wildfire season, right? We have to shut the power down when the winds get high. And it's like, well, why do you got to do that? In other places, they don't have the problem. Well, because we're not cutting the trees back
right.
Where the power lines are. And, if the trees get swung into the power lines, then, it could be sparks and we can start a fire. And well, okay, so you should cut the trees back. Oh, no, we can't do that, right? Because that, that might interfere with animal habitats or whatever. And it's like, okay, why don't you do this? How about bulldozing some of the, the underbrush in these forests? Because you've now created them into tender boxes. All right. Like why not like do forest management? So when you have wildfires, oh no, we can't do that because that's not natural. It's like, well, what's natural is that a forest fire comes and burns all that shit up. Like that's what's natural. So you're going to get, you're going to either manage the forest or you're going to get the, the natural, ravages of Mother Nature. And the thing is it's like, okay, so you guys think the Indians that were there before you, you think that they were the proper stewards of the land. They burned the hell out of those forests. They practiced forest management through fire. They didn't have chainsaws. They burned stuff. That's how they managed the forest. Well, they would manage. Hey, here's how we can harvest animals out of the forest is we burn them, burn the forest over here and the animals will come running this way. And that enables us to hunt the animals. I mean, the point is nothing about this is particular natural or proper management. It's all it's a fantasy land thing that comes about from a total lack of understanding of reality. And these are the people who are in charge of that place, which is this, should be a paradise. I mean, this is the reason all these people moved to California in the first place. And it's run by loons. Well, and they're turning it into a mess. Well, the bigger thing, I feel like it's a shame, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, y'all still choose to live there. So either fix it or don't complain.
Well, the thing is what the very short term, Democrat, they don't have to be they don't have to be responsible to their constituents because all that extra money that could go to left to vote now. Yeah.
That's really it.
Well, there's that, but they also have so many payoffs to their special interest groups on the left that they would rather spend that money on worthless things. And that's where all the money goes rather than actual, boring infrastructure stuff that would actually see. Because, if they really wanted to make a difference, they would bury their power lines. I live in a place where they bury power lines. Well, guess what? It's you don't have to worry about wind and you don't have to worry about forest fires because they're buried.
No, well, you might have to worry about earthquakes. But, the power lines are coming down in an earthquake anyway. It's just that much more expensive to fix a power line that got cut in an earthquake. But on the other hand, if you have less wildfires, it probably balances out. But you don't even get to these questions.
Yeah. No.
Because what you have is stupid, Luddite management of natural resources. And, and that's the thing. California's got plenty of room to build reservoirs to hold water. California could easily finance buying water from all kinds of different places. Believe me, Louisiana would be more than happy to
some water
pipe as much water as they want. We got all the water we could possibly need. When you brush your teeth in South Louisiana, you leave the sink running because it doesn't even occur to you not to turn it off. And if somebody says, "Oh, you're using too much water," it's like, water is what we got. What are you talking about?
Right.
It's a totally different mindset here because we don't have that kind of scarcity. And
Right.
part of it is like we actually live in a swamp, but the other part of it is like we're not burdened by the stupid environmentalism that actually has no basis in reality.
Yeah.
Like it has, like you say, oh, climate change caused the wildfires. And it's like there have been wildfires since before there were human beings.
Right.
And the human beings you guys think are such, like environmental superstars with Indians started wildfires for
Right.
their own purposes and released all that carbon into the air. Right? They didn't care. They were fine with it. Right? And you know what? When we came here, what we found was a paradise. Like, wow, how neat is this place? This is gorgeous. Well, the Indians had made it gorgeous by starting wildfires. Right? And so now wildfire is the worst thing ever. And it's everything about this is stupid. And at some point, I don't know when, and I don't know what's going to cause it. At some point, you're going to see those people wake up and it'll be like, oh my God, what have we been doing? At some point, this is no longer going to be. I think it's probably when we find out that we weren't all that wrong in the 70s when they were talking about the ice age that was coming.
Right.
When the whatever it is, I can't remember the name of it, the meander minimum or whatever the hell it is, where the sunspots become less, and there's less solar energy that comes, and so we get a drop in global temperatures that's based on the sun and not the amount of a trace gas in the atmosphere, which is carbon dioxide. And you're like, oh my God, it's cold here. Like, yeah, it's cold, right? Like the sun controls the temperature, not your Chevy Tahoe. Like, what did you think was going to happen? And all of a sudden,
that's
it's like,
a relief because I have a Chevy Tahoe.
there you go.
I'm free at last. Free at last. Hey,
now Ford Explorer, how you doing? So like the whole point is, at some point, reality does intervene, and we're gonna get to that point. Like, and we'll see. Actually, there's a show, and I actually a couple. I watched it, I think, right before we basically took 3 weeks off for the holidays. But there's a show on Netflix that was like a hit for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and then it kind of faded away. The show is called Ancient Apocalypse.
Oh, I watched it.
You watched it?
The
okay, great.
Thing.
Good. We get to talk about this. And it's this guy who's like this, I guess he's a journalist, but he's like an amateur archaeologist. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Right. And so his theory is, and there's things that he brings to the table that are, like, he's not a total crackpot. There's reasons to believe that this may actually have some validity to it, is that there was an advanced human society in various places 10, 15,000 years ago. I mean, the basic archaeological narrative is basically about 4,000 years worth of real civilization on the planet. And this guy says, no. There was things out there that predated that. And there must have been people keeping some of the technologies and things that those guys had mastered alive, and then kind of re-sparked it in ancient Egypt and all these other places. And he goes to all these different archaeological sites and provides some evidence of what he's talking about. And the gist of what he was saying was that it must have been a comet or something that I don't know, that hit the Earth or came close enough to the Earth that it dumped a whole bunch of debris on the planet and caused a catastrophe, or an environmental catastrophe. Like there's this whole thing, like if an asteroid hit the planet, it's not so much that we would all burn up, it's that it would kick so much stuff up into the atmosphere that it blocks out the sun, no crops can grow, and that's why everybody dies if a big asteroid hits Earth. So it's something like that. Basically must have wiped out a civilization that was around in a bunch of places. Okay. And he does this whole thing. Point is, and I don't know that this guy's right in the particulars of what he's saying, but every, 10, 15, 20,000 years, you're going to have these kinds of episodes on the planet. And we're talking about climate change that, it may be like half a degree warmer in 100 years. And it's like, you have no idea what's going to happen in that 100 years. Like we could literally get smacked by an asteroid and it's all done. Yellowstone, the caldera at Yellowstone could explode, which is, I mean, you're talking like geologic time, so whatever, but like we're about due for that to happen. And like it's happened 3 or 4 times over the course of the last 1.82 million years, where this thing blows and it's a super volcano and it blocks out the sun. Like these things are stupid to be discussing when you have very, very massive things out there that are essentially planet killer type events, which are incredibly possible that could happen to us.
Well, Scott,
I'm not saying next year. I'm just saying, if what you're worried about is 100 years from now, the seas will rise X number of inches or whatever based on this little, temperature increase in 100. It's like, no. Like there is so much going. Like think about 1923, all right, which it's a number that's like in the public conscious now because of the Yellowstone prequel that's out there right now. But think about 1923 and what was real and true in the world at that point, and compare it to right now, and recognize the accelerating pace of change in society across the globe, and then project out 100 years. It's impossible to know what things are going to be like in 21, 23.
Well,
the idea that we even worry about that is nuts.
Okay, so I watched that show, and you're exactly right as far as it being insane. So 12,000 years ago, this event happened. Suppose his theory, this guy's theory, that and it hit, and there was a huge deluge because the meteor hit or whatever it was, asteroid, and then it wiped out Atlanta, and Atlantis, and that would be over in the desert. Okay, all of this stuff. But the thing that he ended with, I don't know if you remember, which I was like, holy crap. He's like, oh, by the way, they gave the exact where the Earth was when all of this happened. In Turkey, there is a yes, they decoded it. Mm-hmm. And basically the exact position of the Earth to the moon, stars, whatever, back then when it happened is exactly where the Earth is right now. Right. And they basically warned, and all of the snake mythology they think was the comet because of how it was whatever. And my son and I got done watching this and we looked at each other like, crap, now
forget about going on a diet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's been a joke on Twitter forever about the sweet meteor of death. Right. And I was like, we may actually get that damn thing. And right. Then what? But the interesting thing, there was many interesting things in this thing, but at the elevation, where they find some of this amazing kind of is it astronomy, is it astrology, whatever, the orientation with the stars. Right. Every single continent had some version right. of some history of this. Right. And they had very advanced kind of technology to understand this. That reminds me of a piece of good news, actually, that I looked up. And that is, I don't know if you heard or not, but scientists have been trying to figure out why Roman cement is so good. Mm-hmm. And researchers at MIT, some young smarty pants, figured out how to make cement self-healing. The Romans, over 2,000 years ago, figured this out, which is why all of their roads, like through Italy and through Europe, still exist, because the cement was created to be self-healing. Mm-hmm. And this is an innovation that now we can do. I figure we're pretty near the end. We will start building roads like the Romans. Our infrastructure will actually last, and the sweet meteor of death will, put us all out of our misery, and we'll go back to the Stone Ages. And the other interesting thing is everybody who survived these events had to get up to the mountains, had to get into elevation, because it wiped out like most of civilization, most of the people.
Right.
And then there's a myth of a man who came to all of these different people, giving them technology. So I don't know. It's interesting to watch.
Right. And I'm not going to say that I subscribe to this guy's theory. I think there's a lot of nuggets of fact that he brings to the table that, you know, he's weaving together in a way of his choosing, which is not necessarily the narrative of this, but he does bring a bunch of things to the table that are like super interesting, and we shouldn't, because there is no written record of you know, of history from 4,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago or what have you. I mean, we don't have that. What we have is an enormous amount of mystery, like the Egyptian pyramids and all this other kind of stuff.
Right.
And you know, there are going to be theories bandied about until there's some method by which we can actually find out what happened. You know, and I think it's certainly plausible that you could have had civilization that, you know, that started earlier and couldn't sustain itself. And it's really interesting because you have a lot of these, you know, primitive cultures had basically the same myth of people, you know, the bringer of light or whatever, bringer of technology, who arrived over the sea. I mean, like the Aztecs had it, and the Incas had it, and the Indonesian culture from, you know, way back when, they had it. I mean, it's, you know, it's almost a similar type of origin story or mythology that you had with all the great religions of the world. Is this, and so, you know, I mean, something has to explain it, and I'm not sure what that is. This guy puts it out there, and he gets immediately discredited by like the entire archaeological establishment in the world, right? Oh, he's a crackpot. And it's like, well, okay, but you know, like, what do you have? Because what you have doesn't explain any of the stuff that he brought out there. So let's have a real debate about it. And that was kind of his thing. Is just like, well, these guys won't debate me. They just want to call me a crackpot.
Well, the other thing is that he's getting private funding to do some digs and investigations that many archaeologists haven't even touched. And he's also, one of the things that I found compelling about his talk was that he, unlike the archaeologists, had a certain notion, is bringing kind of a human understanding to the past, the culture, and that people haven't changed that much, which I agree with. Right. So it's not like the people 4,000 years, 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, since the beginning of modern man, are alien to us. It's just that the technology has advanced. And his point is that the needs that people had in the past are the needs that we have now. You have the need to eat. You have the need for fresh air. You have the need for, waste removal. You have the need for watering your crops. All these things required certain kinds of even primitive technology to happen. And so it's not absurd to view history through the lens of the people who were making the history at the time. And I think archaeology can kind of be like removed. And the other thing is that one of that he brought up that I thought was interesting is, of course, that their entertainment at night was the sky. So their architecture oriented to get the most light from the moon makes sense. Right. I mean, there's certain things that they would have to do in order to kind of, you know, everybody wasn't going to bed at 7 p.m. when the sun set. What were they doing? They were sitting around a fire and talking, or they were creating sources of light some other way, like using the moon capture light like they did. It makes sense. Right. And so they had to innovate. So there's kind of this almost provincial idea that modern man knows things that no one else has known before. And in some cases, that's obviously true. But in some cases, the needs for primitive, more primitive societies, if they were even primitive, advanced societies that have gone defunct, they had to have medicine in order to live. They had to have certain things in order to live. It didn't change suddenly modern wise. You know what I mean? Like, so that's the thing that I thought
and it's the idea that 6,000 years ago, we were all cavemen. And then all of a sudden, civilization kind of sprung out of nowhere in 2500 BC. I've never been satisfied with that as an explanation. Like that to me, you had to have had not only a long progression toward where we are, like a very long, but these things don't happen in a sort of linear thing. Things rise and fall because they've always risen. You look at what we know of civilization has been a story of rise and fall. Right. So why would it not have been that prior to, recorded history, right? Like, what makes you think that, okay, well, everybody was living in these caves and then all of a sudden, somebody, let's grow crops, right? And then we had cities and then we had and this just kind of all happens. Like, well, how come it was, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago when people finally decided to grow crops? Really? 10,000 years ago, they didn't know, oh, by the way, this stuff that you're eating, that you're like picking off the ground, right, that's a plant. And like the seeds from that plant, you can plant someplace else and it'll grow. Right. Right. I think they knew that. Like, I think, they probably figured that out. Right. And so like, why wasn't there, you're really going to tell me there was no agriculture like 6, 7, 8,000 years ago? We know that some of these structures that, they were talking about in ancient apocalypse, we know that these things existed. They've been carbon dated, and that they're older than it. Like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, I think I'm saying it right. Göbekli Tepe, I think is the name of it, which is this fascinating archaeological site.
But weren't you creeped out though? Like I was, like when he was like, I don't even like entering here. Like the vibe was so bad. I thought they captured it.
Yeah, supposedly that's a real thing too. Yeah, like the people who excavated it, there's like all these. It's almost like the like the Macbeth play of right, archaeology. Like all kinds of weird stuff happened when they unearthed this site. And they had a lot of trouble, as I understand it, getting workers to do because they've only excavated a small portion of this. They covered this entire hill of all this stuff. Like they've done the what is it, the sonar?
LiDAR.
Yeah, right. And so they know that there's all kinds of stuff underneath that they haven't uncovered. But it's like really, really hard to get people to want to go work over there because it's like such a rotten place.
You know what I was thinking? I was like, that is where God has Satan chained up underneath the earth, and we're messing with stuff that every time we get into this, I was like, what are we doing?
Like if Michael Crichton was still around, he would absolutely write a book about that. It's, oh, hey, like we've unearthed this entire thing, and then like all hell broke loose.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that that's like way, way older than anything in recorded history. And it was clearly an advanced society that built this thing. Like it was clearly that, that had an organized religion of some sort and had, they obviously had some sort of written language because otherwise there's no way that you could have the architectural knowledge to build the thing the way it was built.
Yeah.
Right.
It's astonishing, really.
Yeah, it was, probably along the lines of like Roman technology at least, but this is 8,000, 9,000 years old. Okay.
Right. Before.
And so like that blows up the narrative and you can't deny that it's there. And I can't remember the name of the place that the series starts from, but it's this place on this hill in Indonesia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they built this whole chamber inside of this structure on top of this hill. And it's like, they don't even know how old this is, but they know it's really old. And it's like, okay, well, and it's tucked in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
But everything about the thing, it suggests an advanced society.
Yeah.
And you had the same thing in, was it Malta? Mm-hmm. And then you had all this stuff in Mexico and all of these other places on this thing. I've never even heard of this thing in Ohio.
I know. I was like, how have I never?
Serpent. Yeah. I've never heard. Was it Serpent Rock or something they call it?
Serpent Rock. I lived in Michigan my whole life, and I was like, I've never heard of this thing, and now I want to go and see it.
I know. I mean, it was like this super neat thing. Like they built this earth mound in the shape of a snake,
pointing to the
and it's like precise astrological orientation so that it faces the stars and all this kind of stuff. And over not too far from where I am is Poverty Point.
Right.
Which
have you been there?
They make a big thing in Louisiana. Oh, this is a tourist thing and people need to come. And I'm like, okay, I know where Poverty Point is, and there is zero reason that anyone would go to Poverty Point because it is literally in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there is nothing there. And yet it's a pretty fascinating little, place, right? Where they kind of built these, these mounds, kind of overlooking, it's kind of in the Mississippi River Delta, sort of. But I mean, it's very precise, astrological orientation, the way they did this thing. And, nobody knows what this is for.
Right.
They don't know how old it is. They know it's really old.
Right.
I mean, like really old.
Yeah.
And it's these things are not explained.
No,
they're not explained. Like you don't know what this stuff is, and you go, okay, oh, this guy's a creep, and he's a fraud, and he's pushing these these theories that are not right. Okay, fine. So you explain it, and the archaeological community is mute on the subject. They have nothing to offer, just that guy's wrong. And I'm like, no, that's not good enough. And I'm not saying I believe him, but I'm curious about this, and I want to know. Like, give me some alternative theories that work. And the fact that they're not coming up with any tells me y'all aren't the authority you think you are.
Well, I think it's true in all of the science is that there becomes an internal bias, and to be accepted, you have to think certain things. And that's why the innovation, once again, like with Elon Musk and SpaceX and everything, comes from without the ivory tower types, because they're more interested in protecting their hegemony over information than they are risking it.
This dates back so long, it's not even, go back to Galileo, for example.
Right? Oh, yeah.
I mean, this has been the case throughout human history, that, you have an establishment that is corrupt and is not interested in new things, believes things which are wrong. Someone comes along and disrupts it, and usually pays an awful price for that.
Yeah.
And then ultimately is proven right.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, this is true in America on so many fronts right now.
Right.
It's, you almost get excited because it's like, these walls are all going to come down sooner or later.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what comes next. So, we'll see.
Okay. We're a little over time, but I do want to spend the next 4 minutes talking about probably the most important positive thing that has happened. And, and that is the sad story of Harry the Spare, Prince of, or maybe no longer Prince of England, and Meghan Markle having severed their ties with such a tyrannical regime, and that they are no longer suffering, and that they are speaking their truth.
Okay.
Actually, I'm joking, everybody. Here's my thing about the Meghan Markle and the Prince Harry thing. I want to be spared, speaking of spared of seeing his stupid face. And why do Americans have to deal with them? This seems like a other people problem.
No, this is totally an other people problem. The world is not short of celebrity beta males, of which
he killed 25 people. He killed 25 people.
Not with his bare hands.
I mean, him talking about it, I was like, what is wrong with you, dude?
Yeah, I like nothing about him. This is a poor little rich boy. It's what this guy is.
Yeah.
And like everything about him is unimpressive. Not much about her is impressive. Like we were talking about before that we started the show. I hated her in Suits. I hated her in Suits. She was like the most irritating, awful part of Suits. And like somehow she's a star because of that. And it's like, well, but she's hot. It's like, there's hotter.
There's hotter. Well, she's beautiful, no question. I've never
I
seen
mean,
that.
she is. I'm not, but like, does it justify that? Like
No.
how irritating she is? I
No.
mean, this is actually what I tell you what she reminds me of. She reminds me of AOC. Like I think, like I mean, the ethnicity is different, but the personality is pretty similar, right?
Mhm.
Like it's the drama queen, attention hog. Like every bad thing that happens to me, I've got to go rush to social media and make a big thing about it, and like the rest of the world is like, I don't care about your problems, right? Like I mean, like my problems are bigger than your problems, and nobody cares about mine, so why should I care about yours? And the this kind of we've had this I think it's in decline along with a lot of this other stuff, but the celebrity media has latched onto these people as like a lease on life. You remember there used to be an enormous amount of celebrity media. Like we were absolutely enthralled with the lives of all of these people that were more, the famous and more, and that's really like if you've noticed, that's really gone away
It
over
really
the
has.
last 8 to 10 years. Like people just don't care anymore. And I think a lot of it probably had to do with like the Epstein stuff and some of this other, developments that people just really got to the point where they decided they didn't like celebrities, and maybe it was because all of them decided they had to talk about politics all day. But people don't care about Hollywood movie stars, and they don't care about the Paris Hiltons of the world, the celebrity heiresses. Like people just don't give a damn. And so Harry and Meghan come along, and the celebrity media, which has been dying on the vine, is like, oh, let's give them more of this. And I just don't think it really resonates. Like I just get in conversation with folks, and I mean, very few people have brought up Harry and Meghan. Like very few. And in 10, 15 years ago, I mean, the way, like, or going back further than that, I mean, you remember when Princess Diana was a thing?
Yeah.
That poor woman, they actually, I think, probably ultimately killed her.
Yeah.
Because the psychopathic attention that they used to put on her was so much that nobody could do that. And like, it ended in tragedy, but like now, I don't think anybody really cares about Harry and Meghan. Like,
Well, the thing is they wanted to get out of public life because, Harry
right.
couldn't see that his wife going
Sure.
through that. So they come to America and then basically reveal every aspect of their lives publicly.
Right. On a Netflix series. It's
And
like,
she's got a Spotify podcast. And the whole thing, they're just annoying. Like, I was like, if you wanted to be quiet and go somewhere, dude, I can respect that. Like, I can
they
see
wouldn't
as a
have thrown
kid.
you out of the royal family if you'd have just said, hey, we want to be quiet. There's plenty of members
Right.
of the royal family that like don't get in front of cameras at all.
Right.
And those are the ones I respect. Right? Because they're just like, well, look, I'm just collecting rents from my just vast amount of property in London. And
Right.
just like, that's enough. Right. And I'm,
Right.
you can find me at the Polo Club. Good for them. All right. Live your life and leave me alone. And, like that, I'm fine with. But these attention whores, I just can't abide it, because I look at Prince Harry, I'm like, I don't see much that you're doing in your life that is better than what I'm doing. And, like the rest of it can be explained by the fact that you've got real privilege as opposed to like normal folks who have probably more talent and work ethic and character than you. And so why do I care? Like, what do you bring to the table that I should spend my time worrying about your situation? And she, I mean, oh my God, the whole, like, you remember that, like the only scene that I've seen from this thing where she's like doing her like exaggerated, you know, curtsy that, oh, this is what they teach. And I'm like, shut up. How many women would like have caused zero problems for the Queen Mum to be a part of the British royal family? I'm not even saying that's a thing that I would like want, but like there's billions of women who would be like, okay, I'll do the exaggerated curtsy and I'll learn all the, the things I got to say and do. And I'll be, I'll learn all the courtly manners and have somebody teach it to me and I'll behave myself and I'll do what you say or whatever so that I can have unlimited wealth, unlimited, power and privilege, can go anywhere I want and be welcomed and freaking treated like a queen.
Royalty.
Right? Royalty. And it's not good enough for her. And I'm like, wow. Okay. Oh, all I want is to be a regular person. Really? Really? Let's go chase Target out in wherever in California these people are. Let's see how much time she spends in Target. Right?
She wants to be a regular person who her children have titles.
Yeah, her children have titles.
Well, they're
like
throwing
$9 million mansion that they live in, and have all the servants. And like, oh, okay, all right, okay. I'm just a regular person. Yeah, whatever. Did you hear about the guy? Speaking of like not a regular person, you want to talk about somebody who's got a little bit more merit. There was, and I didn't see the entire thing, but I just love this story. There was this guy from South Dakota, I think, okay, who wins the Powerball, right? And he goes and he builds this ranch in South Dakota, 40,000 acres or something, and builds this, like unbelievably awesome ranch house, whatever, and sells the whole thing at something like, I think it was like a $37 million profit. So in other words, here's a guy wins that. You want to talk about somebody who has outrageous fortune. Okay, this guy actually won the Powerball and then increased his fortune, right? Built something of value and then sold it and is now better off for having won the Powerball rather than most people who win and proceed to fritter away all of the money and maybe die broke, right? Like this dude said, no, I won this thing and I'm gonna take this money and I'm gonna make more, right? To me, that guy is royalty. Right? Like that is capitalist royalty. Here's somebody, you drop a bunch of money in his pocket and he turns around and he makes more with it. And I don't think we should be celebrating Harry and Meghan. We ought to be celebrating that guy and we don't even know what his name is.
Amen. Well, congratulations to you, anonymous North Dakota Powerball winner. We are South Dakota, proud to be an American because of guys like you. And on that happy note, I think we will finish. I think we did pretty good as far as
this was. Hey, it's infectious. Both of us have been smiling the whole time. We need to like. I'm not saying we're going to do like a positive show next week because maybe we won't. But what we need to make a rule on this is that if we have a really dour, mean and nasty podcast like we did last week, right?
Yeah.
We need to make a rule that okay. Next week's is going to be, happy, sunny, Melissa and Scott, because I had fun doing this one. I had more fun doing this one than we did last week. And I actually thought last week's podcast was good, even as negative as it was.
Yeah.
But, this has been more fun. This has been way more fun.
Well, we can always end with a positive segment. I think we should do that no matter what. So I think that I will continue my practice of looking for positive stories because they're out there. And, I hope everybody who listened to us this week, probably on Rumble, please subscribe to us over there.
You can smash the like button and the subscribe button on Rumble, just like you can on YouTube. So do it on Rumble.
Yes. And for those of you who are listening on Spotify and everywhere else, we appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll talk to you next week and we will keep the positive vibes going. So tune in next week. We'll have more positive stories for you.